Hello all again. So this plaster, we can tap on it. I can't really put my fingernail. If it's still soft enough that you can put your fingernail easily into it, it's still a little soft, but this is hardened up. So I'm going to tilt it back up carefully, and I do not want to have this remove from there, come off of the clay. I'm going to leave that attached. Each section you want to completely encapsulate with each piece before you try to move or remove the plaster pieces. We are going to remove the metal shims though. Grab the pliers just in case I have it handy. So I have it handy. Some editing. All right. So, and usually what I do is the two front pieces, because you notice I leaned it back, so in case I do dent the back side, the back of the face, there's usually not a lot of detail there. So we'll peel this back and we can see where we had a little bit of leakage. That's okay. We can usually pop that off. Sometimes you can leave it and it'll just become embedded into the next layer of clay. I might leave this one because it's pretty thin. So I'm going to pull out these shims. And remember, they're sharp, so you want to be kind of careful as you do that. If I take this one off, I can see where the ear is, and I can peel away some of that clay that I put on there initially to extend that line. In like this ridge right here. It's kind of becomes a little place for it to hook on. We can use a tool, the old popular butter knife. It's covered with all kinds of stuff, and kind of scrape that away so it's not something that would be an undercut. And I can check that in some other areas here too. Get this piece out of the way, just go along. I can fill little holes with clay if I need to, and then we're going to make some keys. Now remember, those keys are things that help align it. So what I'm going to do basically for this is make the divots. Sometimes if you're working with other types of molds, like a rubber mold where they might sell you pre-made little button things, you can use those as keys, but those get embedded in onto the shim or whatever process you're using for making the mold. So a couple of things you want to be careful of when you make keys is one of the main things is make sure that you don't create something that's an undercut when you create your key. You want like a shallow dome kind of, sphere, not halfway, less than halfway. And you can sometimes you can just use a wire tool. It's a very fancy tool made out of a bent piece of wire, and with an ergonomic duct tape handle. And you need probably like 3 or 4 of them. Sometimes the plaster, I kind of turn this, and I want to be more careful not to damage the casting or the clay that's right there. So again, it doesn't have to be that deep. If you have trouble, you can kind of use a butter knife, but even that out, because sometimes it makes a very deep. You want to flare it out, so you do not want that to be something that would become embedded. Sometimes you also cut triangles out, kind of wedge shapes. We'll probably catch this here. Fix that. Carve notches out and kind of, you want it big enough so that it catches, but you don't want it too deep. All right, so we've got our shims put in again. See what's going along there. Very similar to what it was on the other side, a little different, but very similar. And we're also going to go back, as this is, wet this whole thing down back here again. Cover it up. So we put our metal shims back in. We have, this is sort of serving that purpose of the mold wall, because the plaster will go right up here. We're going to tilt this back the other direction. But before we do that, and you can use liquid soap or you could use petroleum jelly. I'm going to use a brush to apply it. Sometimes you can just use your fingers, but sometimes it's hard to get into little areas. So and we're doing this so that the plaster, when we put the plaster against this, there's this oily film, and the same thing with liquid soap, it'll kind of leave an oily, liquidy film. Will not allow it to bond into it, or won't soak into it. Now, it can still become mechanically locked, and it'll still be hard to get off. And sometimes what can happen, even the kind of residue of clay sometimes will actually act as a release agent a little bit, but don't rely on that. Make sure you know, sometimes there's residue that's on little metal shims or something that'll kind of help if you forget. You don't have to put it all on the other side. It doesn't hurt to put a little bit on the edge. Anyway, if it gets too thick and globby, clean it up a little bit. You want to get that all that coated. You don't need to put it on the clay. The clay will release from the plaster fairly easily. All right. So we're going to tilt this back, mix up the plaster, and do the same process we had done previously. All right. So after you get that piece done, you'll plaster that piece. So you do one piece at a time. So each time you finish a piece, you take off the shims where that one was, put in the keys, put in the petroleum jelly, mix up and put in the next layer of shims, mix up the next layer of plaster, put that one in, let that one cure, harden, and then pull out the shims, carve the keys, put the petroleum jelly on, put the next layer of shims in, and so forth. So you do the same process over and over again, one piece at a time, so each piece fits against the next, so it all fits together. And so again, keys, don't forget petroleum jelly, and just make sure they all are going to be able to come off. Try to do them so they won't become undercut, and eventually they'll get to the point where they'll all be done. And in our next video, we'll pop them apart. But the other thing to remember is those sections. Do remember, like, until you get it completely done, keep the other clay parts that are exposed wet and covered, and try to make sure that none of the parts come off the clay. So everything's staying completely wrapped around. Each piece is still stuck onto the clay as you make the next. So it all fits perfectly around it. You have to think about it as an entire little case that surrounds the whole thing. And remember to wash your hands so you don't get too dried out. It's good to have some hand lotion to keep your hands from drying out too much. Anyway, so once you get that done, hopefully it'll go smoothly. Sometimes you just pour the plaster too. Alright, just finishing up the last piece there, and so next video we'll be opening this thing up. Alright, take care.